This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everyone. If you are challenged by chronic pain, maybe it's back pain, neck pain, maybe you've got some physical challenges, maybe you've got some vocal issues, maybe it's stage fright, whatever it might be, there is something that can help you. And it's going to surprise you when we get into this today with our next guest. Even in the couple of minutes we talked before we got on here, my mind is blown in terms of what's actually going on within us and why we're dealing with this physical pain that we don't need to. He is a neuromuscular and rehabilitation specialist. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but I'm going to learn more. He is Travis Chastain. He joins us on the program. How are you doing today?
Steve, I'm great. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here and enlightening us on this whole situation, because what I'm getting here is a lot of us are walking around with chronic pain, issues, physical ailments, and it might not just be physical. It could also be tied back into our mind. Would I loosely put here, would I be on target in saying that?
Oh, absolutely. The Alexander technique, which is what I teach, neuromuscular rehabilitation, is all about the expression of how we think in movement, how we're thinking in activity, and what kind of tensions will inevitably be brought into the body, either good or bad. And that our habits of tension, they tend not to just localize in one thing or another. That when we get into habits of tension that are unhealthy, let's say, like I did before I got lost function in my right arm, that when we get into these habits of tension, we don't just do them when you're playing the classical guitar like I did. You also get into these habits of tension when you're speaking, having a conversation with somebody like you and I are having. You get into these habits of tension when you're going for a walk. It doesn't matter what you do. When you get into these habits of tension that are unhealthy, you manifest them into every activity that you do, whether you're aware of it or not. I certainly wasn't aware of it until I started releasing those tensions. But they're there constantly.
I normally don't do this, but right out of the gate, I want to go to your story. We'll get deeper into all of this and how you can help people, what you help them with. But how did this begin for you?
This all began for me from a car wreck in my senior year of college when I was pursuing my master's in music degree. I'm a classical guitarist. I love the classical guitar. My first great passion was to perform and play. And all of that seemed to be in jeopardy when I got rear-ended. Now, when I got rear-ended, the car hit me hard, snapped my neck back, and I had a crack in my neck. That hurt pretty bad. But I got noticed. I went to the doctors and they said there was nothing really wrong with you. So I went home. I went about my life, continued on. 2 years later, all those habits of holding that came from that traumatic impact, they started putting a lot of pressure on my C6 and C7 vertebra. Let me show you what that is. I got my skeleton and everything here for you to see.
Love it.
Yeah. So right around here, I had a compression in my C6 and C7 vertebra. Now, I woke up one day and I had this bad pain in my upper back here. And that bad pain, well, I could get by with a couple aspirin and get back to my guitar. But then the next day, I needed more aspirin to get through my day. And the next day, that pain started to go into my arm. And the next day, that pain went into my elbow. And the next day, that pain went into my thumb to the point it was shaking. Anytime I would try to play some classical guitar, anytime I try to play some Paganini, ooh, there's this difficult passage here. There's this difficult passage there. I feel like I'm getting a cleaver jammed into my back. I feel like I get this radiating pain in my elbow. My thumb starts dancing the jig on the strings. My energy levels were just nothing. And, no matter what I tried, nothing was really helping me. I went to the doctors. I went to the physical therapist. They're like, oh, we can't really see anything necessarily wrong, but here's some strength exercises that will help you. I did the strength exercises. It actually made it worse. I went and got operated on, in fact, to help relieve the pressure. And the spine surgeon, he saw what was going on. Is like, yeah, you got a compression in your C6, C7 vertebrae. That's what's causing this. But I can't necessarily guarantee you that we can do anything to get you back on the guitar. Maybe we can help you with your pain. That was what his comment was. Maybe we can help you with your pain. We think we can, but your guitar playing days might be over. I didn't want to believe him. I mean, I'm practicing 30 hours a week every week, pursuing my dream. And suddenly that was in jeopardy. It was drastically in jeopardy. So I get operated on. I get these steroid injections to relieve the swelling. I feel better for a time. And then I try to come play the classical guitar again. Everything comes rushing back. Every single bit of pain that I had before was back there again. And then I learned about the Alexander technique, which ironically is offered in my school because the creator of the Alexander technique was an actor who was, like me, having this trouble where he was out there reciting, becoming a victim of his own success, reciting into bigger and bigger and bigger halls, and he suddenly loses his voice chronically. And the doctors couldn't understand why for him either. He was losing his voice chronically all day, every day. And it turned out that what he had discovered about himself, these habits of tension that he had learned how to carry in his body, specifically in his neck, his head, and his back, those same tension patterns I was carrying in my back. Tends to be a universal pattern of reaction that we all get ourselves into. And I'll never forget when I went to my first Alexander Technique lesson, and she started explaining how thoughts and what we call end gaining, which is really the habit of fixation. And what I mean by that is that when we get fixated on this goal or that goal, it tends to drive automatic habits of tension into the body. Your most familiar habits will automatically come from that. So if your most familiar habits are to be free, there's no problem. But if your most familiar habits are like me, you carry this tension, these protections of your neck, that's really just putting more compression on your spine, which is happening for me. It's a big problem. But the first session I had, she was helping me release some tensions in my neck. And we were working on something basic like walking, which is what we do in Alexander sessions. We work on re-educating tension patterns that are causing us trouble in basic everyday movements like walking, sitting, and standing, whatever. But she put her hands on my back and my neck, and she started giving me these vocal instructions on how to think before we get into the activity. And most of it was just a lot of standing around in the beginning. And the reason we stand around in the beginning is, well, we want to create a little bit of a space between us and the stimuli of action so that we don't immediately go into our habits of tension. So I stood around for a while and she asked me to think in a particular way, leave myself alone. I feel this release in my neck from her hand being placed there. And my vision starts to get a little bit better for some reason. I don't know why, but it is. And at that point, I learned that there's a connection between the function of sight and the tensions that we carry in our neck, for example. Because my neck released and I started to see better. Well, then a couple minutes later, after she's working with me, I'm starting to feel this kind of release of tension in my arm. And at this point, my arm is very heavy from years of trauma. My arm is very heavy. It's very hard to move. Anytime I do move it, it feels like I'm getting stabbed in the back with a cleaver. But I'm working with her. And I'm feeling these little gentle shifts in my whole neck, head, back relationship. I'm feeling this little gentle rush of circulation. White spots are coming into my fingers, and I'm feeling a lightness in my hand for the first time in years. And then we go for a walk while she's guiding me. And I feel like I'm 10 pounds lighter. That's obviously not possible, but it had taken so much pressure off of my joints, these little shifts that she was doing. And after a longer period of time of practicing the technique, I was able to take what she was teaching me and start applying that into my day-to-day life. That's one of the wonderful things the Alexander technique does. It's not just a therapy. It's a means of teaching, helping us learn for ourselves what tensions that we're carrying in our bodies that could potentially be causing us harm. And I was able to practice. And within every session, I was getting better. I was able to practice on my own. One day, I'm practicing on my own. I'm thinking of my free neck. My arm feels back to normal. So I decide to move it, and I can move it again. And at this point, I can move it without causing that stabbing pain that I'm so used to getting when I try to move my arm to about here. Anytime I moved my arm to about here, it's like, I'm getting that stab in the back kind of feeling, right? It wasn't there. Things had changed enough in this head-neck-back relationship of mine, that pressure that was being exerted on that C6, C7 vertebra had started to change enough that I could move my arm again. And I could eventually get that concepts that we were learning in the Alexander technique and start learning how to bring some stillness, not only into the act of walking, but on the act of playing the guitar. In 6 months after that, I was able to play a phrase of guitar without pain. And then finally a whole piece without pain. And then finally an entire performance without pain. If it wasn't for the Alexander technique, I never, ever, ever would have been able to finish my recital, my graduate recital. I couldn't play the guitar for more than 10 minutes at a time beforehand without just getting an agonizing pain. And now I can play as much as I want when I want. Because the technique ultimately taught me how to identify harmful patterns of tension. It gave me the power to release out of those harmful patterns of tension for myself. And it ultimately gave me a choice of, do I want to be in that pattern or don't I?
It's just amazing. This is amazing, Travis. And would you say, yes, you had an accident. There's no denying that. Yes, you had some damage to your neck. No denying that. But past that, would you say, and I'm going to very simply place this, would you say that that phrase, come on, a lot of this is in your head, actually is true? A lot of this is in your head in some regards. Would you say that that's kind of what's going on here when we have pain? Yes, it's real, but all the other stuff around it, we're kind of making it up and it's in our head to a large degree. Do you think that's what's going on?
Well, I wasn't making up anything that was going on. Like I was thinking in a particular way that was manifesting a particular set of tension patterns that was shortening my spine, shortening my postural network all day, every day. It looked something like this. I was tightening my neck, I was pulling my head back and down, and my whole back was getting compressed. But my thoughts were driving that.
That's my point. Yes.
Yeah.
Again, I meant that very loosely, like it's in your head. Well, the pain was there. It was all there. But we get into a habit, what I'm understanding from you, we get into a habit of expecting the pain, getting, again, habit of tension, and then the body does what you want it to, essentially. So now you're thinking, well, I have pain in my back. It's probably going to hurt to play. It hurt to play. And then on and on and on. It just kind of spreads from there, and it's just normal function of the way we think, that it's just, I don't want to say it wasn't all in your head. You had an accident, you had pain, but it radiated to other areas of your life. This is going on a subconscious level, isn't it?
Well, there's no doubt. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, we carry patterns, what FM called psychophysically, right? And what that means is that in the Alexander technique, we really don't believe that there's such a thing as psychological tensions and physical tensions. They manifest themselves continually and constantly through each other at all times, right? So if we're holding on to a tension, a trauma, or whatever, psychologically, that's inevitably going to move itself into the body. It's inevitably going to. We're not disconnected in any way.
Yep.
We're completely connected from head to toe. Yeah, so, the tensions that we carry tend to manifest themselves constantly and continuously because of a specific way of thinking. And that specific way of thinking is, okay, I have this goal in front of me that I want to achieve. Right? Whatever the goal is, it doesn't really matter. And I start dangling after and trying to grab this goal and grab that goal. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily. But one thing that FM, the creator of the Alexander technique, understood was really exciting is that when we consent to going after and grabbing after and going to get, then we're also consenting to our most familiar habits of tension that we've learned to carry in our bodies to go get it. So for me, anytime I tried to practice the guitar, I tried to go out there and be a good guitarist, do good, do well, like we all try to do, right? But I was carrying just by simply entertaining, saying yes to this stimuli and saying yes to that stimuli constantly, continuously. I was also saying yes to tightening my neck, pulling my head back and down, compressing my entire back, and putting a harm on my body automatically. And
Okay, so
so
that was that the, call it the tensions of habit? You would do that. Why did you put that pressure there? Was it just instinctual? Did you even realize that you would be doing that, putting that pressure there?
I had no idea I was doing it. That's the thing.
Ah,
See,
okay.
that's the thing about habits, right? If we realized that we were doing it, if we could feel the fact that we were doing it, then we wouldn't do it. But we get used to those habits. Those habits maybe were painful at one time, but then they become familiar, and then the familiar becomes invisible. We don't notice them. And we walk around with these habits of tension because we don't notice that they're there.
So your pain when playing,
Yeah.
that was real.
Yeah.
And that was because you were compressing your neck, your spine without you even knowing you were doing it.
That I was without even knowing I was doing it. The only thing I knew is I was in pain. I didn't know why I was in pain.
What from your subconscious caused you to do that compression and I guess exasperate the pain, even when you wanted to do some things that you really wanted to do?
Well, I don't know exactly what it was about my subconscious that did it. What I do know is that I was in a constant state of volition or saying yes to a stimuli, trying to be the very best I could be at the guitar, right? Carrying a particular set of habits around anytime I came to the guitar. Carrying a very specific set of habits anytime I went to go walk. And all that was necessary for me to trigger those habits. It's not really important for why I did it. What's important is that all that was necessary to trigger those habits was to say yes to playing the guitar up here. The
Okay.
only thing that was necessary to trigger those habits when I went to walk was to immediately say yes to walking. The only
Wow.
thing that was necessary to trigger those habits of tension when I went to go sit and stand was to immediately go say yes to sitting and standing. That's the only thing that's necessary. That's what F.M. Alexander noticed for himself. The only thing that's necessary to trigger psychophysical habits attention is to immediately say yes to the thing, whatever the thing may be. Say yes to the thing equals most of familiar habit of tension will follow automatically. And there's nothing that you can do about it after you've said yes. It's done. That's the thing about habits. Habits are simultaneously a gift and a curse, right? You know, most of our lives are automated, and thank God for it. All right. How difficult would life be if you didn't have all these things being done underneath the surface for you?
Like breathing.
Like breathing. Yeah. We would go to bed, right? Oh gosh, I guess I'm screwed.
Right. Yeah. I'm sleeping, so I'm not conscious of it. So,
Right.
I'm not going
Okay,
to breathe.
there we go. Right. Yeah. So there's a
Wow.
lot of things that are automated for us. But if we get a bug into the system, for lack of a better term, right, that bug is going to want to constantly and continuously reinforce itself into every movement that we do. Every movement that we do. These things don't localize.
And for
Habits
you,
don't localize.
was the bug the accident?
The the accident certainly set me further into that space. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
Okay.
But was I a perfectly free, graceful Fred Astaire walking around all day, every day before the accident? No.
Okay.
No.
So I wasn't aware of that. So now it's even clearer and even more impactful because we all walk around. How many of us, wake up it's like, oh, there's my knee again. There's that again. There's this, and
Right.
now you add something else like an event or a true trauma, car accident. Now you've got even more going on there of the habits of tension. My gosh.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, it's interesting you said that about the knee too, because the really cool thing is we are such a unified whole, right? We have muscles that join from the torso into the legs by necessity. That's obviously how we move and how we localize movement, right? So when you get this whole head, neck, and back relationship, this whole structure, if it gets off in any one way or in any imbalances there, any excessive tensions, any excessive shortenings, well, that's going to tighten your legs excessively. It's going to pull negatively on those joints. And that's what was happening to my arm. All these tensions I was carrying and learned how to carry in my back was going into my joints. It was limiting the amount of space that I had here. It was causing compression in my nervous system here. It was causing compression in my nervous system here because I lacked the proper spacing. Spacing that I was meant to have, I didn't have. And then because I didn't have it anymore, well, I started moving with that lack of space, which reinforced new, not very good habits of movement around that lack of space. And then what do habits want to do, Steve? They want to continually and constantly reinforce themselves. And they do constantly and continuously reinforce themselves in our actions, in our activities, and in our movements. Unless we bring some conscious control to it, they run the show.
my gosh. I've been studying the subconscious, but you just opened the door to something I never realized, and I'm sure others never realized of what's going on there. And we talk about limiting beliefs. There's so much more happening here that is limiting us now physically from living fulfilling lives. Wow. Like just amazing, amazing. Can you work with people anywhere virtually on this?
Yeah. There's plenty of people who do. Absolutely. Yeah. I have
Beautiful.
several students remotely.
Amazing. Travis, thanks for bringing this to light. And this I'm
You're
going to
welcome.
say this probably applies to all of us. We probably have something, whether it's chronic pain or things we believe to be holding us back. And physical therapy is not necessarily the answer. It's getting a control on your mind and what's actually going on there. Wow. Wow. I'm blown away. I really am. We all have those things. Listen, you know where I'm going right now?
Where are you going right now, Steve?
To the chiropractor after the show. I already have an appointment. I'm not even kidding. And I woke up yesterday with a weird feeling in my neck, and part of me says there's more to it than just, slept funny. I really
Go
believe.
see an Alexander Technique teacher, Steve. Go see an Alexander Technique teacher.
How do we find you, Travis?
You can find me at my website, www.bodymindbalanceco.com. And I offer a free trial session to anybody who's interested. So come check it out.
I really appreciate you being on with us today and bringing this to light. And I know and have experienced it, with the right mindset, your body can heal itself. But with the wrong mindset, it can do other things that can hold you back and cause you pain. You might not even realize it. Looking forward to digging back into this next time we get together.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.